Well, here we are, 5 days after it was announced that President Trump, or President in waiting, or former President Trump, and now President in waiting, will be the next president. And sitting in New York, where he spends a chunk of his time, is Justice Malala, one of our favorite political analysts. Justice, nice to see you at 9 in the morning your time and what, quarter past 4 my time.
Lovely to see you, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
And how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a whole new world in the United States. So all those things that we South Africans sometimes feel, anticipation, anxiety, they have a lovely expression here, quarterback analysis, as in, I
Oh,
was right.
right.
I did. I knew it was like this and so forth. So you're seeing a lot of verbiage, a lot of quarterback analysis going on. So exciting times, concerning times in many ways. But yeah, let's see how it goes.
What were you predicting before the fateful day or the eventual day?
There were two sets of predictions. The first one was that if you'd asked me a year and a half ago, if you'd asked me a year ago, if you'd asked me in June, I was telling audiences, telling people that I spoke to that it's all over by the shouting, Donald Trump is going to win. And then July happened, and Joe Biden had that absolutely disastrous debate. And Stuart, you've watched millions of debates in your life, you'll know this. The man was pathetic. Donald Trump was all over him, totally dominated the show. And you could see it in the reactions from people across the board. Democrats were saying, "Oh, what have we done?" Republicans were saying, "Yeah, our guy owned it." And so you could see Trump just surging ahead at many, many levels. And then when Biden dropped out, there was that surge in enthusiasm on the part of Democrats. Um, I remember the weekend when he dropped out, I was with a bunch of Democrats in New Hampshire, and they were saying the change in energy, the fact that people who had basically given up and said we've lost already were coming back saying, okay, let me be active a bit. What can I do? Can I go and knock on doors and so forth and so forth? And you saw that. Then you also saw the surge of money, and these were ordinary Democrats saying, "I'll give $10," and that's a lot of $10 if you've got a population of 300 million. $10 here, $5 here, $20, maybe $1,000 elsewhere. So there was a massive surge of money into the Democratic effort, and suddenly you were seeing in the polling, you were saying it was becoming close. The one thing I would have said, and to the point about your question, was that who was I calling it for? I thought Kamala might get it, but I still called it for Trump because I could see he had a story to tell, and people were buying that story. And we can talk about who was buying that story and why. But but the story he was telling was that look at the elites, look at Justice Malala speaking on TV, look at Stuart Lee. And that story was one of they are taking from me. They are saying all these things and not thinking about me. They are saying, take something that in South Africa, comes in and out of the picture. Renewable energy. Then he'd say to the mine workers in Mpumalanga, well, they're saying all these things, but what am I going to do if I'm not digging in the ground, taking out coal and sending it to Germany? An example of this issue, the number one issue, I think, that resonated for Donald Trump is immigration, where in South Africa, for example, many people like me, and I plead guilty, would say, "Oh, what are you doing with this? You're being xenophobic about Zimbabweans, about Nigerians, about la la la, so forth, so forth. Stop it. This is not progressive." Um, Donald Trump was speaking that language, and the elites, if you will, and the elites, I mean people in power, particularly in South Africa in the ANC or even in the EFF, if you will, oh, we are educated and so forth. But on the ground, people are saying, well, we don't have jobs, we don't have, and you're telling us to welcome all these people. The Democrats, Joe Biden's administration and Kamala Harris played it very badly, Stuart. They played it very badly because they said, no, there's no problem. Now, there is a problem. There is a problem in the sense that whatever you might say, the immigration has gone way up in the United States. Illegal immigration has gone way up. People on the ground are feeling like, ah, even if you don't agree with them, acknowledge their pain, acknowledge their concerns. And don't look down on them. And that is that smackishness, that oh, the great unwashed complaining about this and that and so forth. So that's the first thing. And I think it's a global phenomenon, by the way. If you look at Gayton McKenzie and say, where did Gayton McKenzie pull the right strings? It's on immigration. If you say who is doing well, many of these parties that have emerged have gone on that issue because people feel like, oh, at least he's listening or she's listening. So Donald Trump did it very well on that kind of issue. So although I called it for Donald Trump, I wasn't that convinced that I was correct. The polling, which people say a lot of things about pollsters and where they're coming from and what happened in 2016. In South Africa, May 29, Stuart, you take Social Research Foundation, you take a whole bunch of others who were doing these polls, and many of them actually got it right to the T.
Yeah.
MK Party was a party that many of us were like, they won't make it. They're not, who are these people? 6 months to go, and they got them just right. So the polling was very neck and neck, but Donald Trump is master and commander today. He's in charge, and he's going to
And
bring
I
about
mean,
some.
already, and typically in his unique, brash style, he's saying these are the things that are going to happen now. I'm not waiting. This is going to happen before the inauguration. One of his promises was that the Gaza-Israel problem will be sorted before inauguration happens. And then they've just been there daily. There are more and more things, and I put my hand up and said, "Do not like the man. Do not like who he is as a person." And there are many, many, many who would agree with that. But a lot of the stuff that he's saying, I think he's got the cajones to get out there, regardless of what people's opinions are, and make it happen. And he gets an Elon Musk, in the sidecar with him, and there's plenty money, there's plenty power, there's plenty will, and a lot of people are saying, well, let's see, maybe it's not going to be as disastrous. Taking immediately calling on New York and saying we're going to take away the rights for the immigrants to get hotel stays and stuff like that, which of course, it's easy enough to say, well, gee whiz, I wouldn't mind a weekend in a hotel.
Look, I mean, this is it. I think Trump is doing what the US is really what many of us admire it for, and that's the can-do spirit, the do it now. Um, I'm always amazed by in South Africa over the past 2 months, tens, if not hundreds, of children have been sick, been in hospital. Um, because they've been poisoned by some or other chemical in food. You keep on hearing leaders who are in government saying, we must do this. They don't say, I am sitting in cabinet and I'm doing this. And this will stop today. And are you in power or are you not in power? Donald Trump is in power, well, will be in power on January 20. But already he is utilizing some of that power. Some people might say to nefarious ends, some people might say to good ends. but you can see that he says, I have a mandate from the people of the United States. I'm going to use it. Time is of the essence. In South Africa, we had an election on May 29. On November 29, it will be 6 weeks later, 6 months later, and we're still talking about what are the policies of the GNU. It shouldn't be that way. So there is something to learn here about be a man or a woman in a hurry when you get into that place so that you can do the things that you say. You're not new to this. This is not, to hear the ANC saying, we are going to do this when you've been in power for 30 years, it's ridiculous. So that's the first thing. I mean, Donald Trump comes with the energy. The people around him come with the energy that says we are going to do some serious work. I don't. I'm concerned about some of the things they've said they're going to do.
Like,
Um, I'll give you an example. Is saying I'm going to drain the entire civil service of people who I deem to be rivals of mine, opponents of mine. Now, uh, many of us across the world believe in a civil service that is not politicized, a civil service that when administration steward comes in, takes over, directs that administration to carry out its agenda. To now politicize it by saying, I will bring in people who are only, it's almost like cadre deployment at the very vast level where we say, no, only are you an ANC person? Are you brought in through the deployment committee? I think when it comes to, for example, law enforcement, where he says the Department of Justice will be fired, everyone will be fired, and I'll bring my own people in. Well, when my own people come in, are they going to dispense justice? Are they going to
that's,
follow the rule of law?
yeah.
Or are they going to be, oh, so Stuart, you said one, two, three, and you said blah, 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 and so forth and so forth. It's it's just a dangerous precedent because if you have a free and fair election next time round and justice wins or Kamala Harris wins or someone else wins, they say, but you came in with your own people. I'm draining the swamp and I'm bringing my own people. And then we come in and and it's boom, boom, boom. It's not the way to build society. It's an extremely worrying thing, and there are others where I'm concerned. But when you have a mandate and you've been given the mandate, and so to the point you were making about Donald Trump has always said, I'll stop these wars. On day one, I will speak to Putin and Zelensky, and I will make the tough calls. I will stop funding these things and so forth. He's doing those things. He's fulfilling those promises. Have those wars stopped? Well, it's early days. He's not even in power. But the man was on the phone on Friday to Zelensky, and you speak about Elon Musk. I don't particularly understand Elon Musk's position in this administration, but there they were talking to Zelensky, and from my understanding, he's already spoken to Putin. If he can stop the war on terms that don't give Putin power that he doesn't deserve and power that says you can go and invade Belarus or you can go and invade, Hungary or someone else, then we are fine. And if we can get that resolution where China doesn't say, oh, look, Putin did it with Ukraine, I'm going to go after Taiwan. And of course, Cyril says, I'm going after Eswatini. Then I think like him or dislike him, Donald Trump will have done humanity a great, great service.
But I mean, can we say for 1 minute that he's hardly the most diplomatic diplomat that we've ever met? Do we?
No,
And he got such a sweeping wave of that mandate. Has he got people around him who can talk the soft talk, who can sit quietly at a table and speak sensibly to their counterparts?
Well, I'd like to be a bit naughty about it and say, Stuart, we've had soft talk.
Where did
Think
it get
about
us?
it. We've had, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, has been flying to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv all this time, talking to Netanyahu, trying to talk to Hamas, to Abbas at the PLO and so forth. You don't see we are a year plus after October 7th, and you don't see movement. What you're seeing is an escalation almost at every level. Yeah, Netanyahu has fired his defense minister and essentially saying, "I'm going for it, and I'm going going in hard over the next." It's not. We're not reaching a settlement of any sort. Um, will will Donald Trump come in with it? Maybe he'll bring a new energy to these discussions that needs to be there, that hasn't been there. He'll bring a new, who is this war a year and a month later benefiting? Um, I've said again and again that the biggest problem is when you think that people who want to destroy the one side or the other side, that neither of them have the interest of humanity, of the Palestinians, of the Israelis at heart. And so you have to find a third way here. And we in South Africa have, spoken about these things for a very long time. And oh yeah, we're gonna do it this way and so forth. So Donald Trump, I don't think his brash manner should be given a chance to break things even further. But wow, there's a bit of a if he can put people in a room and say, guys, we're not leaving until we get something that says ceasefire, that says stop destroying hospitals in Gaza or elsewhere. Let's give children a chance at a life in a school and so forth. I mean, for all his faults, this man could walk out having redeemed diplomacy of a certain sort, having redeemed himself for many of the things that he said and done,
Yeah.
and maybe redeemed humanity. So I say if it's not about no, my ally is Israel, and I will support them by any means necessary, even if as it is my view, even if Bibi Netanyahu is wrong, but saying let's stop this war, and I might like Benjamin Netanyahu, but to continue to conduct this war in this manner may not be the best way to find the still missing hostages, to bring this to an end and so forth and so forth. So it would be interesting. Ukraine and Russia have been going on since 2022. Um, we have American arms, other arms being sent to Ukraine. There is a principle there about do you allow Stewart with his big guns and big money to take over Justice's house and not do anything? But we are not actually supporting the Ukrainians, or I mean, the world is not supporting the Ukrainians in it. It's just saying, oh, here's a little bit, and just keep fighting them. And so they're stuck in the middle of this fight for now, going on 3 years. And where's that gonna end? So
You talk about the nefarious needs which are almost certainly driving some of Mr. Trump's ambitions. Tell me about some of the good stuff that you see.
no, look, I mean, if you can find a way to bring these wars to an end,
That's number
you
one.
know, this is something that Trump has said before in his first term, where he spoke about the forever wars, and he said, what are we getting out of this? It's there is a lot that I could criticize Trump for, but one of the things that are key that I think in those statements about the forever wars is that looking back at the 4 years that he's been out, nothing has improved in the global peace architecture. It's the same or worse. And we're now staring down the barrel of a very much bigger Middle East conflagration. We're looking at more wars in Africa. I mean, DRC, Sudan, the West African coup belt, where the Americans have essentially, in fact, left some parts of that. So in many ways, Afghanistan has not been solved despite the departure of the Americans in a very bad way. So there is something I think whatever one might think, Trump has a point about where do we take these things? Why do we not have a way of resolving these conflicts much quicker without wasting money? And he's big on that this is a waste of money. And I think he might not be saying, oh, for the sake of peace, let's all be Nelson Mandela. But it's a waste of life, a waste of opportunity, a waste of the future. And so I would say this is something to think of and to think of in a way. I would say if he can be helpful, the world would be a better place.
I know you keep a very close eye on South Africa, your homeland. Um, what is happening in the EFF? I think there's about 10 of them left. I think 20 of the remaining 10 have already gone to the MK. What are you hearing? Are they
Stuart,
done? Are they all done and dusted?
not yet, not yet. But Stuart, can I just say something about? It's very interesting the question you asked me about Trump. Can I close off that loop a little bit?
About the good things?
Yeah, about the good things, but also about the world reaction to Donald Trump and our reaction as South Africa. I think a lot of it is, and I did this. I was analyzing the elections for ENCA, for example, over the past week from here, and talking to Americans, a lot of Americans on the streets about what it means and so forth and so forth. Um, I just want to say, I think South Africa is going to need, South Africa and Africa are going to need to be very savvy about how they engage with the United States now. Um, we've premised our foreign policy very much on, oh, we fought against apartheid and this is our friend and so forth, you know. And that's good. That's good. It's good to have principle, to have alliances, but also at some point you have to say, what's in it for me? Um, Donald Trump is America first. It's not always good because we need America. Many other people need America. But in South Africa's case, we need to give and we need to also say we've got unemployment. We've got youth unemployment of 65% plus. We've got general unemployment of 35%. If you think about it in not economic, narrow economic terms, but in broader, it's 45% unemployment. Half of us, if the two of us are two South African men sitting like this, one of us is not working. It's a problem. It's not a problem. It's a crisis. So we have a whole bunch of programs. A lot of those South African men and women work in agriculture. They pick oranges in Limpopo. They work in the farms in Ceres in the Western Cape. Um, that fruit goes to America duty free. We can sell an American without incurring oh no, you gotta pay to sell in America. We don't. And that's because of AGOA. South African leaders have this thing, no, Trump is this, he's terrible, he's da da da. But we're selling the Americans our product. 1,800 products can go duty free into the United States. Our wine, a whole bunch of things. We need to sell more to the Americans. Okay, we need to sell more so that more of our farms hire more people, and we deal with this massive problem of the fact that our people are sitting without jobs. So I've been very interested in the South African and African response to Donald Trump. And that response has been, they're behaving like the Justice Malala, a columnist. Oh, this man is like this, and outrage, outrage. But if I was in power, if I was in government, that wouldn't be my first thing to do. It would be what is in our self-interest. So navigating this landscape, Stuart, navigating this landscape, saying things have changed. What's in it for me and for my people in South Africa? If we can sell Americans our stuff, if we can give them our, Makosa shirts and all this and so forth and all
So
these
much.
things. There is so much. There is so much. So I hope government leaders, policymakers will say some self-interest on the part of South Africa. This thing where we always trying to show up that no, 30 years ago, the Soviet Union was on our side. Yes, it was on our side, but the Ukrainians were on our side because they were part of the Soviet Union. The Russians were on our side because they were part of the Soviet Union, but they were not on our side alone. So, this thing where it's, oh, are we not going with the Ukrainians? We're going with the Russians. They were on our side. It's the misguided. We need to start doing things. So Trump is actually an opportunity for South Africa to test out its deal making. I've said before that, oh, Donald Trump called South Africa, what did he call us? He used a profanity, shithole country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said, he tweeted in 2015, South Africa is a total mess. Now, you could sit there and say, oh, how dare you? It's time for us to say, the G20 is meeting in South Africa. Come and see how wonderful Cape Town is. Come and see how wonderful the Kruger is. And to say to him, let's do business. Donald Trump likes nothing. What was the name of the book about him? The Art of the Deal. He sees himself as a deal maker.
Love
So
that.
he's Ukraine, Russia, as I can make a deal there, and like I can give them peace. I can make a deal in the Middle East. I can stop the Gaza Israel issue. I can do a deal. We should be thinking now. Trump is all these things, but he wants a deal. If we
I'm,
can do it as South Africa,
I'm
I'm telling
sorry.
you, yeah.
No, go on.
Yeah. So I think we can get a positive out of what's happened in the United States with this election. So
I get quite confused because on one hand, he is definitely cozying up at a certain level with Putin. And at the same time, he is saying, Russia's the bad guys. I don't even know how he gets away with it. We have Olalamanku, we were talking a month or two ago, and he was saying exactly the same as you. Hey, listen, it's time for you to start cozying up, for us to start cozying up with the Americans because, why do we want to be seen with bedfellows who are seen by the West as dodgy? I mean, really, how much have they paid? How much? What have they saved in the past that has made us so reliant on that side as opposed to looking to where we can make deals?
yeah, absolutely. But the thing you say about Trump, how can he get away with causing up
Putin.
Putin, and at the same time saying they're the bad guys and so forth. I think I think in many ways that's something we have to be prepared for, that he'll do a deal with Putin and get him out of Ukraine, maybe. I hope he can. I really hope he can, and he does. Um, but why are we then buying into this? Oh, yeah, but he will confuse us because we are standing there saying, "Oh, these are great guys." Da da da. He will support the Ukrainians and also do a deal with Trump, and we are sitting there saying, "No, we are communists and we are." Principled, and we're doing this and so on. We have to be principled within the context of we also need to do things for ourselves. If you look at trade with the United States, which is a democratic country, or open country, and our trade to Russia, we do nothing with the Russians, but we prepared to blow up our house with the Americans because, oh, those guys, on false history, by the way. Oh, those guys did this and so forth. So Trump will confuse us because he'll speak to Putin, he'll cozy up to him, and he'll also threaten him. He'll cozy up to Kim Jong-un, and so forth and so forth. We should be asking what is in our self-interest here. And that is what we should be focusing on, going for, doing something about.
The next month, or certainly the time between now and his inauguration, is going to be very interesting.
It's very interesting. It's going to be even more interesting. I mean, you think about something simple like people like me say, oh, he's been convicted on this, he's been indicted on this, he's a felon, so many, all that is true. All that has happened. But already you see on Thursday, 2 days after the election, after he's been declared the winner, you see the prosecutors who went after him saying, well, in American law, you cannot prosecute a sitting president. This man has won the election, and therefore all these cases come to a stop. And so you see the barriers clearing as his win becomes a reality. And so he's definitely on the runway to implementing his agenda. I look, I mean, I find a lot about that agenda very, very, and I've said this to you earlier. I find it concerning, but that agenda is clear. And for the world and for South Africa in particular, it's how do you work with that agenda as it is, and find profit for yourself, and not get stuck in, oh, which is what we tend to do.
Okay, that's America for now. Right, let's
Yeah.
go back to Juju.
Yes.
What's happening in the EFF? What do your spies tell you? Can it
The,
can it survive?
the EFF will survive, but it's going to survive in a very different form. I think what's happening um, in the EFF is that there are two EFFs now. There's an EFF that is born out of the ANC. That EFF is the EFF of Julius Malema, Shivambo Floyd, and a whole bunch of others. Then there's another EFF. If you think about Fana Mokoena, who was one of the founders, but he came from a more Black consciousness movement background, ideologically influenced by people like Steve Bantu Biko. If you think about someone like Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, same kind of influences, influenced by more the Francophone revolutionaries, your Frantz Fanons and so forth. All of it is based on Black self-love, Black affirmation, um, African and Africanism, if you will, in the way they look at the world. Um, and then you go on to Sinao Tambo, and who's the spokesperson now, and a whole bunch of others, even Naledi Chira and others. They they're not ANC people. They are not Jacob Zuma people. They're not Ramaphosa people. They're a whole. They come from a very different intellectual, ideological framework. So what you're seeing is that the ANC of factions, the ANC of Jacob Zuma, the ANC of theft, the ANC of corruption, of tenders, of affirmative action, of this, the ANC that has destroyed South Africa over 30 years, the ANC that is just me, the ANC that came after Thabo Mbeki in 2007, the corrupt ANC of Jacob Zuma has been at war since 2006, 2007, when they protected him and da da da. And Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu and a certain range of others are from there. They're still fighting those battles. So Floyd Shivambu, Jacob Zuma comes back, gets 15%. It's like, oh, I want my dad. I'm going back to my dad. He's running back in. That's what's happening here. Julius Malema is equally attracted by that. Julius Malema, the usefulness of Julius Malema for me, the past 10 years of his running his organization, has been that if I want to know what's happening in the ANC, I listen to Julius Malema, because he doesn't actually run the EFF. He's got his people in the ANC telling me, hey, Juju, Cyril said, oh yeah,
He's running PR for the ANC.
Exactly. So everything that is EFF is actually just, oh, we're still fighting those battles, you know. He stands up in parliament and says, Cyril was a spy for the apartheid government. It's guy. You're still fighting the old battles, you know. And you know, Jacob Zuma is kicked out of the ANC. Oh, I'm running to Gandla, you know, and I'm having tea with the man. He's still of the Zuma faction against the Mbeki faction or the Cyril faction. There's still factions of. So a guy like Dalim Pofu is exactly the same. He was in the ANC. He took a big chunk of money. He was deployed to the SABC. Then he becomes a Zuma man, and then he becomes an EFF guy. Zuma comes back and starts a party. I'm going back to my dad. I'm going back to my dad. They're all rushing back. Oh, my dad is Zuma. It's not Cyril. They're taking sides. No, no, no. It's still the same. They're still fighting the battle inside the ANC. So what's happening now? You see all this drip. Mkhwebane, oh, I'm going back home. I'm going back home. They are all Zuma deployees going back to Zuma or going back to the ANC for those who want to, but there aren't any doing that right now. So you're seeing this battle of the ANC. What started with Polokwane in 2007 is still continuing. It's nearly 20 years later. They're still doing it. In saying that, people like Fanamukwena are like, what is going on with our organization, the EFF? Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, what is going on? So you have Mbuyiseni Ndlozi saying, I'm going to stay and fight within the EFF. Julia says, I hate to be with me, but he's also fighting the guys who've left. And so he thinks he can have something left. I think he's going to see more hemorrhaging. I think more will leave. The EFF, if Julius remains and continues to behave as he's behaving, and his behavior is one that says, this is my plot and you do what I say or you leave. A guy who's as quality as Fanamukwena, you know, who has already left, someone like Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, the younger ones, the Sinawa Tambos may leave. So the EFF could find itself in the position where you and I are old geezers, so we know what Azapo is, or we know what the PAC is.
Nope, even.
Not even, exactly. But the PAC was so wrecked by factionalism in the run-up in the 70s and 80s. In 1994, you think about how people were scared of the PAC, or, drive the whites into the sea, all this rhetoric. It got 1% in 1994. Since then, it's got 0.23, 0.4, 0. The last time was 0.23. They've been rescued by Cyril Ramaphosa, giving them a position in the GNU now. And you know what? They're still fighting. There is a PAC of the minister Nyonso, who is the Minister of Land Reform. There's a PAC of Narias Moloto, which meets there and says, oh, he's taken our position. So that's where the EFF is headed, Stuart. If unless something dramatic happens, and that dramatic event has to be Julius Malema. He is unlikely to want to be the second bull in Jacob Zuma's crawl. So he'll stay with the EFF and he'll destroy it, while people like Floyd are with Jacob Zuma, but they are diminished. They are in an organization where Ubaba is Ubaba. Even the constitution says there will be no election. That it's a dictatorship from the get-go. It's not a democratic organization. This is my toy, and if I want to stop playing, I am Jacob Zuma. Take the ball, I go home, and you guys just get off. That's it.
Yeah.
Looks like it's the right way.
I think it's going to be interesting because Ubaba isn't going to last forever, and maybe Master Zuma will step in. Although I think he quite likes being in the world of commerce. You make a lot more money that. Well, I don't know. Do you make more money by being outside of politics or by being in it? Very, very interesting times, and that's what we always look forward to.
Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting for clients, particularly corporate clients, trying to see where things are going. The point you make about age, Jacob Zuma, as
You
you
actually
rightly,
you made it first. You started.
I didn't start,
You said we're
but
both old enough. Oh, sorry. That's me being sensitive.
but Jacob Zuma, a succession has to be thought about, and if he doesn't think about it, then it becomes very messy when that eventuality arrives. And so, is it his daughter? Is it his son? Is it Floyd Shivambu? Is it Dalim Pofu? Who takes over? And so, my view is that you're headed for real disruption in the MK party, given that at the moment, there is no way of saying this is who. I mean, Floyd Shivambu has just become the Secretary General, appointed the Secretary General of the party by Jacob Zuma. When Jacob Zuma goes, who does the appointing? And so Floyd says, I do the appointing. And Dudu Zile says, no, I do the appointing. And hello, who's in charge of this thing? It's going to be extremely messy. And I wouldn't put it past. I think we should prepare for a situation where in the MK party, which has a violent bone running through it, people start shooting at each other.
And on that happy note, Justice Malala, thank you for your time as always. And if we don't speak before Christmas, have a great one. Any idea where you'll be?
I'll probably be in SA. Who knows?
Come back to the sunshine. We need you.
I need that sunshine. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Justice. Bye now.
Thank you.